before we move on to Mr. Aditya's introduction, let me put out a bit of a reminder / public service announcement. Keep in mind, everyone, that the sign-up deadline for the challenges has been recently extended until midnight Wednesday night. That is Central European time. So those in the Indian standard time zone will have time until the very early morning on Thursday to sign up. I do, though, encourage all of you to sign up because it's a wonderful opportunity to distinguish yourselves in front of leading employers in the field, to gain an extra certification on top of the one we give out for attendance. And of course, the Google form link you can find in the emails I've been sending out to you today and yesterday afternoon. So far, we already have a great number of people having signed up, well over 200, but we do want to make sure that everyone has access to it and that the sign up happens in a streamlined fashion, so that as many of you can take part in this opportunity as possible. Now, before yielding the floor to Mr. Aditya, let me say a couple words introducing him. We are very lucky to have Sai here with us today. He is the CISO for Stellantis Asia for the Pacific region. And he's also the head of the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence for Stellantis. Before Stellantis, Sai has held various cybersecurity leadership positions. For instance, with Google, Diebold Nixdorf, and Wells Fargo, among many others. For this reason, I'm sure all of us are just as excited as I am to have Sai here with us today. And with that, I would like to yield him the floor. And sir, we are very excited for your expert lecture on enterprise security management. For those of you who want to ask questions in the end, feel free to leave them in the chat, and Mr. Aditya and I will move on to them in the final couple minutes of the presentation, and he will try to address as many as our time allows. Thank you very much, sir. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adam. Am I audible? Am I visible? Great, great. And you know, it's such a pleasure. It's so exciting to be talking to our future cybersecurity leaders. And you know, this is one industry where it's absolutely important that we have young generation, new thoughts, and more leadership coming into play. Just given how important cybersecurity has become for all of us here. So I'm very, very excited. And Adam, thank you so much for introducing me. Today, I will be talking about enterprise security. And I'll move to the next slide. You know, this is a topic. If you look at enterprise security, it's a topic where we are talking of how we protect the company and the organization. Now, it's a very, how do I say, it's a topic where I can spend hours and days, and we all can keep talking, keep doing. I will try to keep it simple. I will try to keep it precise, and I will also leave you with a few thoughts on where the industry is heading and where I feel that as an industry and as experts, our focus should be on. I will try to do it to the best of my capability in terms of trying to keep it simple. But if you still have questions, and I encourage questions, please do leave them in chat. I would love to answer them. Okay. First, let's talk of what is enterprise security. It's more importantly, it's trying to look at the enterprise or the organization in a holistic manner. Now, if you look at an organization, right, what typically comes to your mind? Ultimately, the very important thing that we all must realize is whether when you're looking at IT or IT processes or any business processes, it's ultimately to support the business. Now, if there is no business, then there is no IT and there is no cyber security or anything around it. So very importantly, when you look at a business, what do you see? You see different business processes, different technology platforms, infrastructure elements, apps, applications around it, and whatnot, right? So in this landscape, what becomes very important is, are you really protecting all these platforms, different technology elements well? And as you all know, probably the AAA authentication, authorization, access control. Are we auditing our systems, infrastructure security, system security, different aspects around it? And and all of this wrapped with the regulatory landscape. As many of you might be aware, the each country, no matter where you are in the globe, they are passing different cybersecurity legislations. By the year, it's getting more and more demanding in terms of organizations having to meet cybersecurity regulations that are being passed by different countries, different regions, whether it's European Union, United States, India, Asia Pacific, no matter where. So while protecting the company, are we also meeting the regulatory requirements? Is the focus around which enterprise security tries to really tackle this large problem statement. We'll take a quick pause, and I hope this was clear. Otherwise, please post questions. I'll move on. Now, before we move ahead, I really want to set some context and give you some history. If you look at how cybersecurity started, about when I started my career, it was called information security, and it would be a small function sitting either in a network team or in a remote corner in the IT function. Whereas today, it has become so important. It is cybersecurity, and CISOs today sit parallel to CIOs in an organization setup, and directly reporting into the CFO, and in certain cases, directly reporting into the CEO. So the cybersecurity function has become so important really in this context. Now, I want to rewind about say 15 years ago and typically talk about the good old days when life was good, and it much simpler. What did you have? You typically had you never had cloud back then. You had servers hosted in a data center managed by yourself. Typically had mainframe back then was very popular, where you said, hey, it's my holy grail, where I have the most sensitive information. That's my processing system. And then I had my application servers, database servers, which I would call trust. And then I would have VPN gateways, my routers, my load balancers, all of them in the DMZ. Life was simple, it was perimeter security. I could very well define what was my perimeter. I could say, hey, this is my perimeter. This is my data center. These are my trusted servers, application servers, database servers, middleware. And then I have a DMZ where I will host different gateways, and I would put a firewall in front of it. Now, from then, look at where we are today, where it's quite an apps. I can still define perimeter, but it is a very abstract concept. For most organizations, my data loads are in the cloud. My users are all mobile, and there's increased use of BYOD, bring your own device. I'm using virtualization everywhere. There are remote users everywhere. You're looking at third parties. Most organizations today, we live in a very interconnected world. You cannot do business without connecting to third parties. So it's a mesh, it's a mesh and a mess as well. So so it's how do we tackle this changing paradigm is where I want you to think about. I'll probably take you to a slide which will add more color to what I was trying to say. Look at this landscape. It's just to give you a feel of what I was trying to say. And I'll again take you back to where we were earlier. So in our earlier days, from where it was a nice, well-defined perimeter that I could secure, more like a fort. In the days of medieval days, if you can think of castles and forts, for a castle you have a wall, so it was easy. When IT started, they would say perimeter security and draw out and put firewalls and things like that. To now, where the whole landscape has changed so much. This is an illustration of a typical cybersecurity risk exposure or the threat landscape for an automotive manufacturer. And I'm sure we can draw something like this for, say, a bank, a financial organization, no matter what business you're into. So if you're looking at an automotive manufacturer, what comes to your mind? You're thinking of product development, right? So the moment you're trying to build cars or trucks or anything for that matter, it's very important that you're thinking security by design right when the product is being developed. So are we catering to product security risks? Something that I have highlighted to the absolute left. Now let's move on. Now that I've developed a nice vehicle and things like that, what do? It has to be manufactured. Now, the moment we talk about manufacturing, there are several manufacturing risks that you may be aware of in the recent past. There are sophisticated industrial control system, ICS risks that can be exploited. Now, so it's important that I am protecting my ICS systems and manufacturing systems. So you're talking of the next threat landscape. Now, once I have manufactured this car, I need to distribute it, right? So that is when, if typically you look at a manufacturing organization, it's supported by hundreds and thousands of OEMs, right? It's not like the car manufacturer is developing every component by himself. There are so many different players that are coming through. Now, when this integration comes into play, there is risks that come in from these third parties. Am I protecting myself against the risks? What if one of these third parties get compromised? Will that compromise also affect me? So those are questions that we need to start asking ourselves. So you're looking at supply chain risks, disruptions, and then third parties, all through the logistics chain really become absolutely important that we are trying to protect. Now that we have designed a car, we have manufactured a car, and we have talked of how we move logistics and supply chain. What do we do next? We sell a car. The moment you're talking of selling a car or a vehicle for that matter, any vehicle for that matter, you're dealing with customers. You are processing a lot of customer information, a lot of financial information. And mind you, the moment you're talking of customer information and financial information, this is where it goes beyond security, gets into a lot of regulatory dilemmas, compliance that you have to meet, and privacy laws. Different countries, and most importantly, the European Union has stringent privacy laws that you have to meet with. So are we really meeting? Is my system really masking the data? Am I only keeping the minimum data that is required? When I print a report, Am I only having the most minimum information? Am I meeting the privacy law for the region or for the country where I'm doing my operations? So these are questions that we start asking ourselves, right? So from the earlier days, look at how the landscape has completely changed today, right? And then you have this big box to the rightmost corner that you see, the core IT risks, right? So this is where you have your entire IT stack, your infrastructure, your massive data centers, which have now moved to the cloud largely, and when where there is this massive transformation that is going on, you have your email servers, your exchange servers, your content providers, system integrators, and all of it. So the whole IT stack that you have to protect. What is increasingly changing, and this applies to no matter what industry, whether you're a manufacturer, whether it's banking, financial industry, whether, it's you are a technology player, you are constantly innovating. A few key themes, that you will see running across the industry is connectivity. Connectivity is where the world is moving towards, whether it's mobility, whether it is, financial transactions, whether it is technology. The more you talk of connectivity, key themes that you must bear in mind is IoT security, right? So when two devices are talking, is my connection secure? If you just look at the vehicle itself, or the automotive industry, look at the modern vehicles. I'm sure you have looked at it. It's more like your phone, or a mobile phone, where the software upgrades happen over the air, right? So when, if my upgrades on the vehicle are happening over the air, is it really secure? Because mind you, if that kind of a traffic, or the connectivity is not really protected, the vehicle may be compromised. So the more technology software that you're bringing in, the more connectivity that you're bringing in into systems, whether it is vehicle, banking, no matter what, more and more that you're trying to do, your attack surface and risk exposure keeps growing. It's very important that you're very mindful of these aspects. Always think business first. Where is my business heading? What is important for my business? Am I thinking through all aspects around it? And then as my business is evolving, how is my risk landscape changing? So that is a thinking cap that I advise that you always wear as cybersecurity professionals. And uh, always bear in mind that it's an evolving area. So no matter how many years you spend, you will always be learning, and I encourage you to always have that thought process. I'll take a quick pause. I will move on to my next slide. Okay, so we looked at um, the security evolution, right? We saw where it all started many years ago, and how the landscape has really changed today, and and where we are today. So what is the need of the hour really? Now I really wanted to have something simpler than this, but this is the best I could do, while trying to address what becomes the need of the hour today. Um, so let give me a minute. I'll try pulling a pointer if possible. No, does not allow me. No worry. So if you look at right in the center of this diagram, you see different cloud security platforms: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and the SaaS platforms. A few examples of SaaS platforms that I can give: Salesforce, and ServiceNow. They're all pretty prominent SaaS platforms, which are ready to use, ready to deploy, right? And then platform as a service, where you have things like the Oracle Cloud environment. So you no longer have to start maintaining different infrastructure elements. So when it comes to IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, you can, it's as easy as spinning up a service by using your credit card, trying to build up something in either an Azure, an AWS, or something like that. So what does this mean, right? From a cybersecurity perspective, the way I look at it is nothing has changed. From data that would be in my environment, in my data center, it has all moved to the cloud. Does that take away my responsibility? Is it the responsibility of the cloud service provider? The answer is no. While you can contractually protect yourself by having a strong contract with the cloud service provider or whoever is the provider in this case, it is our responsibility that we are protecting our customer data. Always remember, just by leveraging new technology or by any of these platforms, it does not take away the organization's responsibility of ultimately protecting the customer data. So it becomes very important that when data is migrating to the cloud, that you're always thinking of, hey, it's my data, I am responsible for it. When it's moving to the cloud, have I thought through the cloud security requirements? Did I apply the cloud security alliances best practices for various aspects of how my data is being managed? If I have different instances spun up in the cloud, am I thinking of something like a CASB, where I can manage all my connectivity and identities just so that there is not a lot of shadow IT or unmanaged data that is lying in the cloud? Now, your workforce also has changed. You're all the newest and the latest generation. And then, so this generation of workers, they increasingly demand working out of homes and outside of office. Now, very, very soon, you will see a rapid migration moving away from enterprise devices to any device or bring your own device. So when you're allowing access to your workforce to access mission critical systems from any device, it becomes very important that you're always thinking, hey, is by introducing this new device, am I introducing new risks? And the answer is yes, right? So what do I do? Is it possible for me to containerize that device, to secure an environment within that device? Am I thinking of BYOD technologies? Am I thinking of minimum baseline security standards before I allow a connection into my environment? So this is the new paradigm that we all have to think of. The next important theme, that I want you to also think of is virtualization. Given how things have changed, even when you look at servers and all of it, what becomes more important there is the hypervisor level. Because gone are the days, where you had a physical server and within that server, you had one instance of whatever you're trying to spin up. It is all virtual and virtualization. That's a very important theme that is running around. So think of, how do I apply security at a hypervisor level and at a where you have probably 100 different VMs or virtual machines running on one server. Now, how would you secure all those VMs and my ultimate hypervisor? So these are key themes that have changed with all of this coming in. While the tenets of security, access, authentication, protecting your systems remain same, the paradigm has changed now. What has really changed is your landscape has changed. You no longer have data within your environment. By that I mean your own data centers. You no longer have users working out of office. And a very important theme that I will also touch upon is now, what becomes very important is there is so much dependencies on third-party connectivities. even when development happens, there is a lot of reusable codes. A lot of people don't apply thought around it. So while I test the software that I'm developing and apply a lot of rules around it, I don't test the APIs or the interfaces that go and connect various other systems. And that is a reality today. Today, there are no longer standalone systems. You're looking at an interconnected world where all systems are talking to each other. Do I have risks at the API level? If I am using reusable code, am I reviewing that reusable code? Just because there is a reusable component, I cannot turn a blind eye to it or let blind spots into my environment. The basics tenets of to the left, I would like you to look at the absolute left. The basic tenets of network security, putting a firewall and things like that still apply. But, think of things like WAF, a web application firewall, in front of your applications. What a WAF really does is it helps, it's an amazing defense against your OS top 10 attacks, especially around cross-site scripting, SQL injection and things like that. Are you thinking of a WAF? When you're trying to protect your network, also remember that your perimeter is a very abstract context. It's no longer just your internal environment. You're also thinking of how do you protect your cloud hosted systems, which are your external connections moving to the cloud. Now, talking about vulnerability management, in good old days, what would happen is I would have a scanner, no matter what OEM, and the scanner would run scans on my devices, whether it's my servers or my desktops in my environment. Now that I have hosted everything in the cloud, let us not ensure that I turn a blind eye towards it. I'm still responsible for it. So do I have my anti-malware system? Do I have my endpoint detect and respond, which is an even more advanced version of antivirus in the cloud? Am I also, very importantly, do I have my scanners in the cloud? Am I scanning those systems for vulnerabilities and things like that? Are they patched? Especially, it becomes important if they are IaaS or infrastructure as a service, because we remember the moment you're talking of infrastructure as a service, we are responsible for protecting data that is lying in those systems. So, these are some aspects which have really changed. It's important that we are mindful of this transition. Identity, right? Let's talk about identity, which is towards the absolute right of this image in front of me. Identity, while it's pretty fundamental, right? Access and identity. It's to my mind, it's the first layer of defense. So you only allow identified users and you only have authorized users being able to access systems. But in the good old days, what would happen is you would have an LDAP, something like a Microsoft LDAP, where you would have your OU and you would define your different user categories and provide access. Here, while you still can do that, your identity has to be flexible and you should have the ability to federate your identities to all your systems that are hosted in the cloud. You have to think about things like SAML and other protocols and so many other vendors that separate that provide this federation. So which also provides a central management of identities and also a seamless experience for your users. You don't want your users to be managing 20 different identities, which leads to confusion, which also leads to a lack of security compromise. It's much easier for a user to manage one identity and which can then be replicated across so many different systems. So the identity paradigm has changed in this new context. of cloud, BYOD, containerization, virtualization, and so much and so on, So these are a few thoughts that I wanted to leave you with in this changing security paradigm. I'll take a quick pause for a minute, please. Um, Adam, are we doing good in terms of time and how we are progressing?
Yes, very much, sir. I think in the end we can dedicate 5, 7, 8 minutes to questions. Until then, the floor is all yours.
Great, great, great. So these are certain key themes that I wanted to leave you with, and for you to apply thought on. I'll move on to my next slide. Okay, now this is something that I thought would be useful for all of you. Now that we have looked at uh, a typical threat landscape for an organization, we looked at uh, how the security paradigm has evolved in today's date. I thought it's helpful for you to also look at how a typical enterprise security organization looks like, and how is it really organized within a typical organization, no matter where, whether it's a banking environment, financial industry, manufacturing, technology industry. You will have different forms and fashions of a security organization divided this way. You'll have, of course, a global CISO, um, or a CISO who is responsible for the security program. These days, um, CISOs are pretty powerful positions which sit in parallel to CIOs. Sometimes they're also part of board, just given how important cybersecurity has become, which is good. And I hope this continues. And I hope to see many of you as CISOs moving forward. But in very large and complex organizations, it's difficult for one global CISO to manage all of this. And that is where, depending on how many different businesses, um, different unique businesses are there within the organization, you have sector CISOs or business CISOs, and then regional CISOs who focus on specific geographies like Asia Pacific, like Europe, like North America. Now, why do you have these regional CISOs, and then regional security? Because different business regions have different business priorities, cybersecurity priorities, and privacy priorities. So this allows um, the organization to provide that kind of a priority and a focus for those specific regions. To achieve what we just saw in the previous slides, typically in large organizations or even in medium-sized organizations, these are distinct areas of how your security organization can be divided into. One large tower is security governance and coordination, a very important tower. What they do is they set policies, standards, guidelines for the organization. And remember, it's getting very difficult. It's easy to set the policy on the top and then back it up by another 10 policies. Where it gets very complex is given your different compute environments that are evolving, cloud, virtualization. So the technical standards, they really need to keep up with the changing times. So this is the team that sets those policies, standards. The next very, very, very important function that they deliver is third-party risk management. And why do I call it so important? Just given how much organizations these days are interconnected. So today, when I am dependent on a logistics partner, a supplier, a banking partner, or no matter where, it's all interconnected systems. So it's very important to ensure that a third party compromise does not affect you as an organization. I was recently reading a report where it said in 2020, almost 80% of organizations had an impact because of a third-party compromise. So it's so significant. And I cannot stress enough on how important third-party risk management is. The next very important function that this team does is providing reports on your security health, and this is again a very important area. There are two important metrics: key performance indicators. You know how well is the security team performing? How many devices are you monitoring? How much how many assets have you covered? How many audits have you performed? So this is your uh, performance as a team or as a function. But what really becomes very important for the board of directors, for leadership, and for management consumption is key risk indicators. They really want to know that, hey, as an organization, what is the risk level that I have? Where are my risks? Where is the area that needs investments? So this is the team that performs and manages these KPIs, KRI reports. And again, a very, very important function is training, communication, awareness. You're only as strong as your weakest link. And it's very important to ensure that each of your employee, contractors, third parties, anyone connecting to you, have that level of awareness where all it takes is one user clicking on a phishing email and gone. You have a compromised credential. So you don't want something like that. So typically, this tower focuses on something like that. The next tower is identity and access management. I think we touched upon it. A very important tower. That is where this team really functions and focuses on the identity lifecycle, the account creation, right from um, cradle to grave, from a user being born in your system to the account going away. How do you really manage identities, the whole life cycle around it? What is a very important theme around this is federation and application integration, because remember, you don't have all your systems hosted internally. They're all either in the cloud, you have remote users, you have hypervisors. So how do you manage our identities? How do you federate identities? How do you ensure you don't have 20 different types of identities where a user is struggling with? The next very important tower is security architecture and asset protection. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you're talking of real security technology, zero trust, endpoint detect and respond, data leak prevention technologies, a lot of tactical security technologies, firewalls, CASBs, DDoS. I can keep going on. They also manage your cryptographic services. Many organizations have their own PKI implementations internally. They manage multi-factor factor authentications and so on and so forth. Now, this team is typically responsible whenever a new system comes in. They are responsible for ensuring that those systems are really secure enough and protected enough. So this is where all the technological elements of security comes into play. You'll have a lot of security architects on this team. Now, the last team, again, really, absolutely important. You would have heard of red team, blue team. The red team are the attackers, hackers, or ethical hackers, and the blue team are the protectors or the defenders. So both coming together, and I'll talk about the blue team, the good guys first. Don't take me literally, but they are the ones who are protecting the organization. Now, for them to be able to protect, a very important key question, which is what different almost all organizations struggle with, is, hey, are my systems all very well integrated with my SIEM or the security monitoring platform? Unless those logs are coming in, I will not even know if anything is going wrong. So more importantly, is am I even logging? Am I even monitoring? And then have I had granular rules to alert me when something goes wrong? I don't want a compromise to go unnoticed. just because I have a landscape where there are a billion systems. That's a challenge that blue teams face. And the red teams, they have a challenge to proactively test your defenses by running scans internally, by trying to intrude into your own systems, and by doing tests against your applications, and the whole range of things um, against your products, and so on and so forth. So very important function of testing your defenses, and then really being the defenders, the first line defenders. So it's a typical view of how a cybersecurity organization looks like. Kind of pause here before I move to my last slide. Okay, moving on. So now that you have looked at how security has evolved, um, we have also looked at our landscape, cybersecurity landscape. We have also looked at how you can typically you could have a security organization which, when works together, is able to live up to this challenge. Now, I want to leave you with this last very important theme, which according to me is where we as an industry are trying to evolve to. But it's a journey. It's taking time for us to move there. As we speak, for most organizations, most legacy organizations, an identity or an access is a black or white. If Adam, I'm taking Adam as an example, if Adam is in my finance department and has access to let's say the financial system of record for Europe, and once I provide that kind of a privileged access for Adam, in most cases, it's a yes. So Adam will be able to access that financial system of record no matter where he is, at what time he is able to log in and whatnot, whether it's an SAP system or whatnot. But given the changing dynamics where Adam is no longer probably connecting from office, he's probably trying to connect from home, from anywhere and whatnot, what becomes very important is that access is no longer a black and white phenomenon. In this changing world, the way I see access is it's a gray that you're trying to deal with. It's a gray area. It's always conditional and context based. Adam trying to connect to the European financial system of record while being based in Europe during the working hours in a normal context, for me, does not raise a flag. But the moment I see Adam trying to connect from a suspicious region, and I don't want to call out a country by name or anything like that, in a suspicious region, at a suspicious hour, something which does not fall within my pattern of what I define as normal should raise a flag. So ideally, in the example that I gave, I should apply a context conditional based intelligent rule where I make decisions. Should I take away Adam's access altogether? Temporarily, I mean not allow access at all. Should I limit his privilege from let's say a read write to just a read? Or should I only limit access to certain limited resources, like say my intranet, but not my financial system of record? So those are decisions that you make, and then allow access. So from a black and white, the way I see it, and then most organizations are nowhere there. It's a journey that different organizations are trying to move towards. I want you to think of zero trust. Zero trust is going to be the future, especially for you, the younger generation, who are going to be our next leaders. This is the next cybersecurity evolution, where it's no longer going to be black and white. It is going to be intelligent, conditional, and context based. But the current challenges definitely remain. It's easier said than done. You have an increased attack surface. Your security policies are very distributed. You have a disconnected tool landscape. Visibility is very difficult. Your users are everywhere, and there is a need for continuous compliance while also trying to fight threats. Now, again, one last thought that I want to leave you with is don't look at zero trust as a tool. That is a mistake that people make. It is not one tool at all. It's a combination of different. It's when your different security technologies and tools talk to each other. Your SOC SIEM platform must be able to talk to your EDR or your anti-malware platform, to your network devices, to your applications, and then all of these different signals go to a decision engine from where those decisions are made, and ultimately access is governed, through an intelligent system. So this is where, I see organizations moving towards. This is the only thing that will help us survive given the sophistication of attacks. You're seeing over the last few years how sophisticated the attacks have become, and this will only increase. So to fight it off and to ensure that as an organization you're progressing in the right direction, I see zero trust as an approach, as a fundamental philosophy that should be driving your decisions. When you are investing in new tools and technologies, when you're trying to bring together different security tenets and concepts in your organization, always think that, hey, zero trust is my ultimate uh, direction that I want to head towards. So when I'm bringing in, it's easy to be carried away by the latest and greatest of technologies, and saying that, hey, this EDR, this CASB is so great, it can do so many great things. But pause for a minute and say and think that, hey, does it gel with my existing landscape? Do these devices talk to each other? Can I ultimately achieve zero trust? Where, this also is a very important signal along with so many other signals that are coming through, and I'm able to make intelligent decisions and protect my organization. So I want you to think of zero trust more as a philosophy and as a concept, not just one tool in specific. You'll always keep listening of the new, latest and greatest passwordless auth, zero trust, and all of these. But remember, think beyond technology. Think of how it is fitting well in your organization, in your large scheme of things, and is it really achieving the goals that you've intended for your organization? So those were a few thoughts. This is enterprise security is a vast topic. I think we have barely scratched the surface, but I hope I was able to provide some context to you, um, throw light at a few elements around this, and I'll be glad to take questions. I'll also leave you with my email ID just in case you have questions. And I know we have a few minutes, so I'll be so glad to be able to answer any of them if we have now.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. We really appreciate the insights. Personally, I found your lecture very, very illuminating, and I did learn a great many things, part of which were brand new to me, other parts of which you provided really in-depth insights into. Now, if I look at the chat, I see 4 questions already. I will read them out for you, sir, and you can address them. And in the meantime, if anyone else in the dear audience has further questions, like Birendra just now, feel free to put them in the chat. So first of all, sir, a question from Taha. How far can API vulnerabilities be exploited, and should strict verification be implemented, or rather restricted access be given to API management for the account?
Such a great question. It's so relevant again. So what does API do? APIs allow you to connect to two different systems. It's a function or a protocol where both these different systems can talk to each other, typically written in Java, right? So the API itself or the interface itself can have vulnerabilities. Most people do not test it. I will not say restrict use, but be cognizant of the fact that you have APIs and interfaces, and ensure you're testing those APIs and interfaces. Subject it to the same level of scrutiny as you would apply to your own systems. Subject it to a security test. If you're using reusable components, ensure there is a dependency check. If you go to OASP dependency check, you will see that there is possibility to run dependency scans and ensure that your APIs are secure connections.
I think there is some network issue, right?
I'm good. I can hear you.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, are you with us, sir?
Yeah. I'm with you, Adam. Yeah.
Yeah, your audio just stopped. That
Oh,
instantly.
okay.
So I thought there
I'm
was
sorry
some
for that. Next question, Adam.
Yes, so Siddhartha asked you three questions. Firstly, what type of firewall and security mechanisms are in place in nuclear installations and space organizations?
Okay, so to my mind, more than the latest and greatest, you have, and I'll touch upon that as well. What becomes very important is at different layers of your network, do you have the right kind of controls? And you have the next generation firewalls, and I don't want to go into OEMs. You have a whole lot of players around it. But what the next generation firewalls are capable of is deep packet inspection and the ability to identify encapsulated malware and advanced malware which can polymorph themselves. So you need those kind of firewalls to help fight off different hackers. But the way I look at it, a firewall is only as good as how you have configured it. So no matter you might have the latest and greatest firewalls, but if you haven't configured it well, and if it's not really integrated with your overall scheme of security architecture that you have built, it's not going to be effective. So I don't really believe in putting the latest and greatest without applying this thought. So always have this thought, no matter whether it's a nuclear facility or a banking organization or a manufacturing organization. What becomes very important is, hey, which are my most critical assets? And where do I have them in my network scheme of things? Have I applied defense in depth? Have I thought through network security? Have I put multi-factor authentication, the prime line of defense? So firewall is just one thing, and it only gives you so much. It's all those tenets that you have to think through. Of course, the more critical assets it is, you will always go for the next generation firewall, but that alone is not sufficient. Does that answer that question, Adam?
I believe so. Yes. I see that Siddhartha has two more questions.
Okay.
To let others ask their questions also, Siddhartha, I recommend that you shoot Mr. Aditya an email via the address displayed on the screen. I'm sure he will be able to enlighten you within the further two aspects of nuclear cybersecurity that you enumerated. And now I would like to move on to a question by Birendra. Sir, what are the bare minimum tools required for organization security?
That's again a good question. At a minimum, the way I see it, of course, you're at a perimeter level, at a defense level, you're looking at things like a firewall. You will need an LDAP to manage your identities. What else do you need? you need to have a good security monitoring platform, any good SIEM, where you're able to collect logs, different logs, network activity that is going on in your organization, and which is centrally monitored. You need good scanners, and red teaming activities, where if you look at the TCP/IP stack, right, you have the network layer, you have the application layer. So at each of these layers, am I really testing what I'm putting? At a network layer, um, am I really having the right level of protection? So am I doing network vulnerability scans? So so you would need good network scanners for doing static application testing and dynamic application testing. You would need good application security tools, where it's very difficult to read and review millions of lines of code manually. So you need good source code scanners. And once the application is implemented, to ensure that you're testing OWASP top 10, you need good um, dynamic application security scanners. So at a minimum, I would see these blue team tools, or the defense team tools, or the protectors, where you're monitoring the SIEM and all of it, and the red team tools, where you're able to test at the network application layer, and then your perimeter security of firewalls, and then something very fundamental, identity and access management, where you are securely managing your users. And more importantly, always think of privileged users. What are you doing with the privileged users? Have good privileged access management system in place. It's a good question.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of Birendra, Joseph, your question about the presentation I can also answer. After each of the lectures, we will get in touch with our lecturers, and those of them with whom who are willing to share their presentations with us. We will collect them in one place and send them out to all our students at the end of the second week of teaching, when the lectures wrap up. Now, moving on to Tapan's question. Mr. Sai, thanks for the insightful session. Infographics are quite resourceful. Question. InfoSec managers, AVPs, VPs, Ps, and CISOs are usually advised not to put all their eggs in one basket. How do you suggest maintaining a balance between the various security tools, technologies from various different security vendors? What do you suggest utilizing among these three options? 1, to evaluate them based on the Gartner and Forrester reports. 2, to evaluate them tactically after initial/trial deployment. 3, to evaluate them by focusing on MITRACE and ATT and CK evaluations.
I think it's such a valid question. During my presentation, I was trying to drive towards it and trying to provide some guidance on those things. All these three elements, using a Gartner report, testing it in your own environment, doing a proof of concept, where you really are seeing, if you're investing in, let's say, an advanced malware protection system, test it out. Take 2-3 different vendors, test in a lab setup, and see which of the platforms is giving you the best of results. Now, so the POCs, Gartner reports, they are one thing. And I think, as though it might sound boring and repetitive, but I really want to say that ensure, I'll go back in my slide. Yeah, this slide. Ensure that it fits in your large scheme of things. It's useless if you have the greatest of technology that lives by itself and does not talk to your other security platforms and does not form a part of your zero trust approach. These signals, or whatever function that particular piece of technology is bringing for you, has to be able to talk to, let's say, your SIEM or your monitoring platform. Unless it does that, unless you see that it is fitting well in your large scheme of things, don't invest in that particular piece of technology. So always ensure while what you have said is very valid, don't just get carried away with it. Ensure that it is fitting in your large scheme of things. Okay.
Thank you, sir. If you're running a bit over time, you were already really generous with your time, but is it okay if I ask you 2 or 3 more questions and the rest of them the students can send you in an email?
I can take one last question, Adam. I have a meeting to attend, but I'll take up one last question, and then, of course, please feel free to reach out via email. Yeah.
Of course, sir. Thank you very much. So the final question would be from Kamal Aswari. Your lecture has been very enlightening, sir. I'm curious to know where the ransomware attacks fit into the enterprise security system. Do the individual user has to defend it, or the security architecture is the solution?
Lovely question. It's so relevant because ransomware has become so all pervasive. What does ransomware do? It changes your file format to say a .crypto or any other format where the adversary or the threat actor is able to um, decrypt for you and provide it for you. And for that, they ask for a ransom to pay. Now, I believe all good organizations must take a stand against ransom, against paying ransoms. Now, it's easier said than done, right? If the most critical of my data is let's say gets locked or compromised, what do I do, right? So this is where it becomes very important that you're thinking about ransomware even before something bad happens to you. The most important defense against a ransom attack or a ransomware attack is something very basic, which is backups. Ensure that your critical data is always backed up so that you have a copy of the data, even in case it's compromised or let's say it's subject to a ransomware attack, so that your business continues and you don't have to pay a ransom. Now, that's a survival mechanism. What becomes very important is these days, look at the next generation anti-malware, antivirus softwares like EDR, especially endpoint detect and respond. They have the capability at an endpoint level to identify ransomware, and then advanced malware that typically comes in as ransom. So we just spoke about technology, but more importantly than these technology elements is the people element. 90% of ransomware comes to your environment through phishing. When uh, let's say an employee or a contractor in your environment has clicked on a phishing email link, so educate your users against things like phishing and build security awareness. So ransomware is a very important topic for all organizations. It's a great question, but it's a combination of factors that is coming in. Remember, no matter how much security evolve, it always boils down to people, process, and technology. So we spoke about the technology element, EDR. We spoke about the process, which is backups. And we also spoke about people, which is the most important link. So educate your people, ensure that they are aware, they are able to identify phishing emails, they're able to identify spammers and things like that.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for being so generous with your time. Constantine, Venkata, and the others, please feel free to follow up with Mr. Aditya. He pointed out that he will be happy to answer your questions in the email address on the screen. Sir, we have a lot of people thanking you for the great expert lecture in the chat. I would like to join them in thanking you. I feel like I learned a great deal. And thank you again for the excellent lecture.
Thanks, Adam. It's been my privilege really to be here, to be able to talk to our future cyber leaders. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Aditya. It was great connecting with you. We
Thanks,
hope you will
Ashit.
be be a part of many of our further sessions. We'll stay connected.
Thanks, Harshit. All of you have a great day ahead. All the best and have a bright future.